Good morning, all.
Morning.
Morning, miss.
I think we can start the class. Let the remaining join as they come in. So, any doubt in last class? Lower limb orthosis. We have just seen the foot alone. So, is there any doubt? Okay, can we go into the topic? So, the next orthosis is ankle orthosis. So, first we have seen the foot. Foot means like it will include the metatarsal joints, tarsal joints, and the subtalar joints. So we can give stabilization or support for those joints using the foot orthosis, and we can correct those deformities using the foot orthosis. Now we will come to the ankle. So in case if the problem is a little bit higher, then we have to go for the ankle orthosis. So this ankle orthosis will control the ankle and the foot joints. Okay, so overall function of this ankle orthosis is it will help you to control the immobilization by giving support to the particular joint. So whenever you're giving support, automatically like there won't be any movement, and because of that the inflammation will be controlled and it will be healing up faster. Then other thing is like it will limit inversion and eversion. So sometimes if they have any ligament injury or if they have any muscle weakness, they will tend to have more of inversion and eversion injury, or like more of inversion and eversion movement by more of inversion and eversion movement whenever they step in. So this will be this one you can prevent using the ankle orthosis. Then this ankle orthosis will be promoting dorsiflexion by maintaining the plantar flexor muscles, because of the gravitational pull, the plantar flexor muscles will be most of the time it will be pulled down. So due to this, the dorsiflexors will become tight, so that will lead to deformity. So with this ankle orthosis, you will be able to prevent those things. So you will be promoting a good dorsiflexion movement, or when you are maintaining the ankle in a neutral position, the dorsiflexors will be able to act well. Then another thing is it will be giving a controlling forces to stimulate the collagen alignment. So why especially collagen alignment here is because of the gravity, the muscle will be always in a pulling down position. So they will be having a lot of plantar flexion movement. So the collagen also will be aligned towards the ground. So that alignment will be controlled by this ankle orthosis. Then it will be giving a good proprioceptive feedback in case if the person has any problem with the proprioception or sensation. Okay. So these are the functions of the ankle orthosis. The next like types is we have nearly 5 types in this. So one is stirrup orthosis. The stirrup orthosis means it will help you to control the calcaneum. So this calcaneal control will help you to resist the inversion, or it will control the inversion. So by controlling inversion, automatically the ankle will be held in neutral position. So for this stirrup orthosis, we have 5 types. One is air cast stirrup orthosis, multi-phase, sure step, active ankle system, and Ritchie brace. So here if you see, basically the types are depends on the company which is producing. and there is only minimal deviation in the types. So multi-phase means this is a multi-phase where you can control, sorry, this is the air cast where you can fill the air here. If you see here in this, like you can fill the air. So this will help you to reduce the swelling also. Okay. Then multi-phase, if you see, like you will be able to give some movement, sorry, control, you can fix the range of movement that is happening in the ankle. So this will help you to hold the ankle in a certain position. Okay, so the types, there is no much of the difference about, among the types. It is only the companies that is producing it. So here basically if you see, it will be controlling the ankle in one neutral position. Okay, then it will be having strips to control the inversion and eversion. So you will be having a figure of 8 strips to control the inversion and eversion. Or if you don't want, this also will control your inversion. Okay, so additional pad. So you can see clearly here. So here if you see, there is an additional lace. Lace in sense like it's a strap. So this strap along with Velcro will help you to protect the inversion and eversion. So it will be giving you figure of 8. Can you see here? The strap is attached here and it will be taken around the ankle and you have to fix it in figure of 8 position. This is one type. Another type is like you just bring like you will have a strap. You have to stretch it and fix it on the opposite side. And both sides you will be having the strap. So this will give you a good ankle stabilization. Is that clear? So you have two types of ankle foot orthosis. One is stirrup orthosis where it will be controlling the calcaneum, that is resisting the inversion. So with just a additional attachment like this, it will resist the inversion, or with a strap, it will resist the inversion. Okay. The next type of ankle foot orthosis is lace-up orthosis, where this is mainly used for sports purposes. If the particular person is prone to inversion injury, then you will be using this kind of shoes. So basically for runners and other persons who are having continuous running will be using this. So you can wear this inside your shoe so that it controls the ankle in a proper neutral position. Okay, so here if you see, you will be having figure of 8 straps which will be controlling the inversion and eversion. Is that clear? So this is the second type. So stirrup orthosis is the first model to control the calcaneum. Second is lace-up orthosis, which will be controlling the inversion sprains, because here it will be controlling almost all the joints from the foot. Next type is elastic support. So this is just used for tendonitis. So it is the elastic pull-on sleeves with silicone that supports the TA tendon. So it is a silicone like this. This is one. Elastic one like this. Inside, if you see, you will be having a silicone support that is supporting the TA tendon here. Okay, so inside the socks, you will be having a support. Okay, so this is one type. Another type is prophylactic ankle orthosis. This is to again decrease the incidence of sprain. So this is again a elastic sleeve with figure of 8, this one. So you will be wearing, like it is like a sleeve, you will be wearing it. Then you can fix the Velcro. So here if you see, you can just pull it and fix it here. This one you have to pull it and fix it here. Then additionally, you will be having a figure of 8 support. So this is prophylactic ankle orthosis. So again, this is also to decrease the incidence of sprain. So you can make the sports person like runners, athletes to wear this so that you can prevent the ankle injuries or sprain, prevent the ligament injuries. So next is control ankle movement walker. So this is given for people who needs like for who the ankle should not bear much of weight. So maybe used for fractures, severe tendinitis or like tendon injuries. if you feel that the particular person should not bear any weight, then you can use this. So through here, if you see through this side metal strap, the weight will be bared down and the weight will not go through the ankle. So this is called controlled ankle motion walker. So the complete weight from the calf muscle, it will be taken up by the metal strips and it will be coming down. Is it clear? Then function, what are the function of this AFO? So basically it helps you to prevent the twisting injuries. So twisting injuries means like any type of ankle or waist injury, you will be able to prevent it. Then provides toe pickup during swing to prevent dragging of toes. Then it gives the stimulation during the late stance. Then it corrects the valgus and varus deformity. Valgus and varus deformity means inversion and eversion deformity is corrected. Okay. Then mainly if you see when you walk, first you will be having heel strike, then flat foot, then the heel off, then the toe off, isn't it? So that is the normal gait pattern. So during this time, when you are bearing a lot of weight in the toes, it will be causing them pain. So that phase is quickened up by this kind of orthosis. Okay, so once you go for heel strike, foot flat, immediately you will be having a toe off. So that is the basic function of this AFO. So that it is reducing the uh, dragging of foot, and this will reduce the injury to the toes. So this AFO can also be in a plastic or metal one. So metal one, if you see, sometimes you will be having a cuff band. This is here. So this cuff band, as I said, when you have this cuff band, the weight will be transmitted over the cuff band and it will be taken up through the metals, and you won't have much weight bearing in the foot. Okay, so this one is a little different where it is a plastic one. Here you will not have much of weight, like here you will be having weight bearing in the foot. In this only you will be able to reduce the weight bearing from the through the ankle. Here you will not be able to reduce the weight bearing, but this is given just for a support for the patient. So sometimes like you have different models here where you can adjust the angles. So nowadays you can adjust the angles also while walking. It's not that you have to go with a limited ankle movement. You can also go with a multiple ankle movement. Next is knee ankle foot orthosis. So once you feel that the knee is also unstable, and to control the instability, you go for a little higher one. That is ankle from the knee. You will be giving the support. Exactly. So again, this will be like working with the 3-point principle, where the knee will be giving supported from the anterior aspect. Then from the posterior aspect of the calf and the thigh muscle, it will be giving the counteracting force. Is that clear? From the anterior surface, you will be giving one force to stabilize the knee. Then counterbalance force will be given from the thigh and the calf muscle. So if you see this particular orthosis, it will be starting from the thigh. Okay, then till the foot it will be there. So it will be controlling the ankle, it will be controlling the foot also, foot joints also. Okay, so you can see here. So this is the knee ankle foot orthosis. Okay. So here this is the single force which is given over the knee, and this is the counter force which is given in the thigh, and this is the counter force which is given at the given at the calf muscle. Okay, so these are like we have many types in this. Nowadays, like a lot of new cosmetic things have come. So this is a very olden one. This is a little bit new, and this is the newest one, which will be very simple, and you can wear it inside the pants, and and with the normal shoe you will be able to wear it. So people from outside will not be able to see whether they have wear this particular orthosis or not. Okay, so here if you see, this is the thigh part, which will be having both medial and lateral support. Or then you will be having the proximal or the lower thigh band, this one. Then the knee joint. So this is the knee joint. Okay, this is the new like advanced knee joint one, where you can control the angle. So if you fix 0 to 30 degree, then they will have only 0 to 30 degree. Okay, so this is the knee joint. Then the knee support, this is the anterior knee support. Then leg upright. So to keep the leg upright, this is the leg upright. These two metal parts is the leg upright. Then ankle joint is there. This is the ankle joint. Again, here is the ankle joint, which will help you to maintain the increase or decrease the angle. Then the stirrup ankle foot orthosis. This is a stirrup ankle foot orthosis. Sole plate. Okay. Then T straps and shoes. So these are the parts of this orthosis. Okay, so depends on the need of the patient, you have to use any of this. So in case if the foot is normal and they can wear the normal shoe, then you can go for this advanced pattern where you have only the sole plate. You don't have the, you don't need the shoe. But people who have problem in the foot also, then you have to go with the shoes. Is that clear? So we will check again how to prescribe the orthosis at the end of the class. So according to the assessment only, you have to decide which orthosis you have to go. So this one again the same parts. This is the straps for the thigh band. This is the calf band. Okay. This is the knee joint. This is again the spring which can lock the knee joint or unlock the knee joint. So if you push it up, it will lock the knee joint. So knee joint will not have any movement. Is that clear? So if you remove it, then you can bend the knee joint. So this is also like same your, this is also your knee supporters only. So if you want only the knee support, then you can go for like this anterior knee support. So which will be having a thigh strap, calf strap and the anterior pull. Okay, so same thing, like whatever model you will be having a thigh one and the calf one, then the knee joint, and here you can fix the knee joint so that you will be able to fix the range of motion. Exactly. So this is called as ankle knee support. Sorry, anterior knee support. Okay. So sometimes like if you want only this, you can wear this and you can also go with the ankle AFO. So if you don't want to have a bigger one like this, you can also go with a smaller one with a AFO. But again, it depends on the need of the patient and the ability of a person. Okay, so this is a continuation of the previous slide, which is showing you the lock. So when you once you pull this up, the knee joint will be able to move or flex. Once you pull this down, then the joint will be locked and you will not be having knee flexion. Next is hip, knee, ankle, or the foot orthosis. So if you need like if, sometimes if you need the support from the hip. So for example, like paraparesis patient or hemiparesis patient, you want the support for walking, then you can use this. So from the hip itself, it will give support. So you have a bilateral one, which will be having a pelvic band, and you have a bilateral one. You also have a unilateral one. Okay, so this one along with the pelvic support, it will come. So that normally if you see all the orthoses, it needs the proximal and the distal joint support. It needs to support the proximal and the distal joint. So since for the hip, the proximal joint is pelvis, it comes with a pelvic band to get the support from the pelvis. Okay. So once the complete from the hip muscle you have weakness and the person doesn't not able to walk because of the weakness, then you go for this kind of one. So it is also having the same features. You have a pelvic band, you have a hip joint here, then you have the thigh support, then knee joint here, then the calf muscle support, then the leg support, then you have an ankle joint, then down you can fix it with either the foot sole or a shoe. Okay, so in this picture you can see how the joints are bent. So this is the pelvic strap, this is the hip one where you can lock and unlock the joint. Nowadays you can fix the joints there itself, like 0 to 30 means the hip flexion will be going only 0 to 30. So like that advanced model has come. You can fix the joint, you don't need to lock and unlock every time. Okay, so you can fix the joint. Then this is a thigh support, then the knee. So here if you see here again you can fix the range through to which you need to have the movement. Then the calf support, then the foot support, then down if you see ankle joint, then this will be controlled with the sole. Is that clear? So this is same like your previous, which has additionally hip joint. So next is like functional cast brace, where like you will be using this for any ligament injury or any if you have if they have underwent any orthoplastic surgery and other things, you can go for this functional cast brace. So this is also called as weight relieving orthosis. That means you can relieve the weight, you can reduce the weight that is passing through the ankle. Okay, so this can be given for healing purpose, basically to reduce the weight bearing. So you can, if you see here, the weight will be directly taken from the thigh through the metal strips, then it will come through the metal strip and it will pass through the floor. Okay, directly it will pass through to the floor. Through the shoe, it will pass through the floor. So no weight will be passing through the leg. Exactly. So that this is called as functional cast brace. So basically, if they want to wear any cast for a very long time and they want to prevent any complications due to immobilization, then they will be going for this kind of braces, this kind of cast, or you can say this kind of orthosis. So this will help you to reduce the immobilization period. This will help you to delay the complications like non-union, malunion, and other things. Then this will help you to weight bear properly along with the proper bony alignment. Okay, so this will limit the weight bearing to the fracture site. So that is the advantage of all this particular braces. So here patellar tendon bearing or ischio weight bearing. So here if you see, this is the ischio weight bearing cast, where from the ischium the weight will be, the lower part of the weight will be taken through this band and it will be passed through the metal strips and it will be taken down. So this is one type. Another type is like you have patellar tendon, where the weight will be taken from the patella and it will be passes down. So if you want, if you don't want to put weight from the thigh, then you have to use the ischial weight bearing design. If you want to use from the knee, then you have to use the patellar tendon weight bearing one. Is that clear? No. So that's all about the orthosis of lower limb. Now we will see about the general principles in the lower limb orthosis. So general principles means general principles for us to use the lower limb orthosis. So the first one is you need to use if it is indicated only and as long as it is necessary, because it is supporting the muscles. So it is preventing the weight bearing through the muscles. So the muscles will definitely undergo wasting. If you are using this for a very long time, definitely it will undergo muscle wasting and or muscle weakness. So long term, if you are wearing it, it will lead to muscle weakness and other complications. So to prevent that, use it unless and until it is needed, then stop it once it is like not no more needed. Okay, then other one is you need to continuously do exercises to increase the muscle strength or to maintain the muscle strength of the particular joints and the muscle, so that you avoid long-term complication. Okay, then this will allow joint movement wherever possible. That means like you have to choose the orthosis in such a way that you need to limit the joint wherever it is needed, and you need to allow the joint movement wherever it is possible. So when you allow the normal joint movement, then you are going into active movements, so that it will be helping for the circulation properly and it will prevent the complication. Is that clear? Then it should be functional in all phases of gait. So it should not be like limiting your functions. So you need to see to that it is functional throughout the gait phase. Even though if you don't get all the gait determinants, but still you need to maintain the functional movement. There is gait. Then the ankle should be covered over the tip of medial malleolus. The ankle joint should be centered over the tip of medial malleolus. If you go a little bit up or if you go a little bit down, then the purpose of the orthosis will not be solved. So you have to go for a tailor-made one so that it is perfectly fitting the particular patient. Same wise, the knee should be centered over the medial femoral condyle. So that is the where the joint will be lying. So you have to see to that it is positioned exactly on that particular medial femoral condyle. Then hip joint should be positioned to allow the patient to sit upright. So it should not hinder their sitting posture. Or you cannot remove whenever you want to sit, you cannot remove, isn't it? So whenever they are going for work, they have to sit in the chair. Then again, they have to wear it. They have to move it. So every time they cannot remove their pants, wear this orthosis, and get up and walk. So it should be designed in such a way that the hip you are able to sit without any problem. Then it should be comfortable, because it is definitely they need to wear for a little longer time. For some people it is lifelong, some people for 6 months, some people for 6 weeks. So since it is wear for longer time, you need to make sure that this is comfortable. Okay, then next is like you need to check the cosmetic purpose. So if it is very odd and seen outward, nowadays like it will become like a social issue. So you make sure that it is very cosmetic. Again, it depends on the age of the person. If the age of the person is very if the age is very if they are very old, then you can just avoid this cosmetic. But if they are young, then definitely you need to check for the cosmetic uh, things. Then it should be easy and cheap, and it should be easily maintained. They should not spend much time to maintain that. They should not spend much money to maintain that. It should be cheap, and it should be less maintainability. So this is because they are going to use it for a long time. So if you are giving a orthosis with of like higher maintenance things, then it will be difficult for them to maintain it. Then general precautions, be aware of and make adjustment for pressure areas, because once you are putting this weight relieving braces bands, it will be taking up a lot of pressure, and continuously if it is pressing the tissue, it may cause some pressure ulcer. So you need to be very aware of it, and you have to make adjust accordingly. So whenever there is a pressure whenever you feel that particular area is pressurized, you have to remove that, and you have to apply some lubricants or anything, so that you reduce the pressure sore. Then check for presence of edema. So if you are putting it very tight over a edema, it may It may break the tissue and it may break the it may just bust the skin and the fluids will come out. So you need to be very careful regarding that. Then timing of wearing. So in a day, how many hours they are wearing. So you need to look after that. Then compliance and skin reaction. So every time they have to check for the skin reaction. Some people may have some allergic towards certain materials. So you need to be very cautious over the skin reactions. Okay. Next. So now we will go into the assessment part. So here assessment part, we have something called pre-orthotic assessment. Then we have to prescribe. Then the like post assessment. So pre-orthotic assessment, you need to check for the joint mobility, sensation, muscle strength, functional level, and psychological status. So all these are very very important, because based on this only they will be able to wear the orthosis, and they will be able to understand the training of the orthosis, and they will know the importance of orthosis, and they will wear it. So if the psychologically, if they are not fit, then we cannot give the orthosis. So this 5 points you have to check. Joint mobility. So wherever joint is mobile and allowed, you have to allow the particular joint mobility. Okay, then sensation, you need to be very careful, otherwise you will end up in pressure ulcer. So you need to check the sensation completely. Then muscle strength, that is like muscle power. How much is the muscle power and what is the muscle power, and other thing, because definitely after wearing the braces, it will reduce to 1 point. So if the muscle power is 4, then little later definitely it will become 3. Okay, so that's why you need to be very very keen about this muscle strength and motor function. Then functional level, already if the person is able to do that particular function and you need to give only support, then accordingly you have to choose the orthosis. Okay, then psychological status. Then next is like prescription of the orthotics. So this is like you need to consider the patient's ability and needs. So patient's ability, again it depends on the like emotional, the physical, as well as the financial part. You have to look into all three aspects, the patient's abilities and needs. So if definitely they are in need and they don't have money, then you can arrange for any sponsors or anything. Okay, so that's why you need to look into all the aspects of the particular person. So for prescribing orthotic, you have to look for the level of the impairment. So for example, if the level of the impairment is from the knee, then you don't need to give from the hip. Is that clear? So if the functional limitation and disability is from the ankle only, you don't need to give from the knee. So according to the level of the impairment, you have to choose the orthosis. Then the status, considering if the patient condition is permanent or going to change. That means whether the patient is going to use this as a permanent device or they are going to use it for a temporary. Okay, if permanent, then you have to more cautious about the materials, cost, and the comfortability. If it is temporary, then you can make them to adjust little bit. Then consider the level of the function, whether the patient is going to office, whether the patient is going to mingle in a community, whether the patient has to walk for a long distance, how is the lifestyle and other things. So you have to look after that. So then if the person is like going to mingle in the community more, then you have to check the cosmetic things. If the person is going to be at home only, then according to that you can give less importance to the cosmetic. Then you have to consider the recreational and work related needs, whether the patient needs this during recreation only, like a sports person, like the ankle orthosis, where you just need to prevent sprain injuries. Okay, that is for recreational activities, or it is work related needs. Okay, then you need to consider the overall weight of the orthotic device. So overall weight of the orthotic device is very, very important. So you have to see to that if it is very heavy, then the patient has to spend more energy on lifting the orthosis. So that then it will become like a uh, extra things, and the person will not use it for long term. Okay. So you need to be very cautious about the weight of the thing. Then some individual may be in wheelchair, and if the orthosis is also is heavy, and ambulating with the wheelchair will be so difficult for them. So you have to consider the weight of the orthosis. Then the mental capacity of the person, whether they are able to use it or whether they are not able to use it, whether it is easy to use or it is complicated. So then pressure tolerance of the skin and the tissue. How is the skin? Whether it is sensitive skin or they are able to bear the weight. So that one you have to see. Then you have to see whether you are going to use it as a temporary or a lifelong one. Okay. Then when you are going to give, then all these things you have to check. That is, after fitting the orthosis, you have to ensure whether it is fitting correctly and whether it is functioning correctly. Okay, so the fitting should be perfect so that the joint and the alignment are perfect. Then the function also should be proper. Okay, so that one you have to check. So these are the things you will be checking in a static one, where check the alignment of the orthosis in the midstand, the foot level, and other things. It has to be aligned according to the joints. Okay. Then in the dynamic, it has to fit and move along with your other joint. It should not be loose, and it should not moving in a different direction. It should be moving along with your other along with the normal joint, so that it functions well properly according to the need. Then orthotic training is, it should include the maintenance. You should teach the person how to wear it, how to maintain it, and how to remove it. So all these things you have to keep in mind. Okay, so you have to instruct how to wear it, how to maintain it, how to remove it. Then along with that, you have to teach them to inspect the skin. On and off, they have to inspect the skin and they have to take care of their skin. If there is any pressure ulcer, then they have to get treatment. If there is any redness alone, then they have to apply some lubricant and other things. So they have to routinely inspect the skin area. So this one you have to teach them. Okay. Then make sure the patient clearly understands the function and limitation of the orthosis. Okay. Then you can form a group so that the group supports the person. Okay, and you have to make sure that the patient attenders also knows how to wear it. So sometimes they need to support the person. So you need to teach the patient attenders also. Okay, so teach him the proper alignment. So teach him that this ankle point should come along with this particular bone. Like that, you have to teach him the proper alignment so that the person is able to wear it properly. Okay, then after wearing, you make sure that they are able to balance with that. So first, after wearing, they have to weight bear with that and balance with the orthosis. Then teach them how to walk. Then teach them how to do the functional activities. So you have to teach everything. So teach them how to balance, teach them how to walk with the orthosis, then teach them how to do the functional activities. Is that clear? So I'm not going to go in detail about this training, because like in musculoskeletal you would have learned about each and every aspect. So that's why I'm just giving a brief idea about it. Is that clear? Okay. Some of the orthoses will have some deviation. There is deviation from the normal gait. So for example, they might have lateral trunk bending. So sometimes when they use the knee, ankle, foot orthosis, they will not be able to stand erect. They may have this lateral bend. So you have to see all these things and you are supposed to correct all these deviation. So they might have lateral trunk bend. So you have to correct it. See to that whether the orthosis is causing the pain or anything and making them to bend in the lateral side, or the height of the orthosis is not equal enough so that it is causing the lateral bend, or it is not properly balanced, or they have muscle weakness. So check all these things so that you can prevent this lateral trunk bending. Then circumduction during swing. So normally, since they are not able to bend the knee properly, they will be going for the circumduction during the swing phase. Okay, circumduction gait. So you have to see to that whether they are using a flexible knee joint or locked knee. So if the person cannot use flexible knee joint and they have to go with the locked knee, then you will not be able to prevent this circumduction. But if they're able to go for knee flexion, then uh, you can avoid this circumduction gait. Is that clear? Then anterior trunk bend. Sometimes the patient will be bending forward because of muscle weakness, especially quadriceps muscle weakness. They will go for anterior trunk bending. Then posterior trunk bending. So this is because the person is not able to lock the hip properly. They have weakness of gluteus maximus. Okay, so these people will tend to balance themselves with posterior trunk bending. Then hyperextension of knee. So this is like if they have inadequate flexor or stop, or the calf muscles are weak, or the dorsiflexors are weak to control the plantar flexors, then they will have this hyperextension of knee. Then sometimes they will have knee instability. Again, this is also because of dorsiflexors or dorsiflexor weakness, or like because of plantar flexor weakness, weak quadriceps. So then other problem is foot slap. That is, instead of going for heel strike and normal walk, it will go for slapping of the foot. This is because of inadequate dorsiflexor assistance and weak dorsiflexors. Okay. Then sometimes instead of heel strike, they will go for toes first. So you have to check for the problem. Okay. Then flat foot, pronation, supination, excess stance with weight. Okay. So all these are like because of any weakness of the muscle, they will go for the gait deviation. So that's why pre-assessing is very, very important. So according to the pre-assessing, you have to improve the muscles, then you have to give the orthosis. So without improving the muscle power, if you are giving the orthosis, definitely in a month or a little later, they will go for further weakness and they will end up in this kind of deviation. So you have to improve the muscles, then only you have to give them. Is that clear? So these are the reference for today's class. Okay. So it is not from a single book, it is taken from many books. So you can see the reference and you can try to get the get the articles. It is from many articles. So try to get this, especially this gate deviation is by many articles. Okay, so you can take the reference and read the articles for more understanding. Okay, so please don't read the slides alone. It will be like a hints only. You have to read the book and the article. Is that clear? So I give you some 5 to 10 minutes break. I think we'll take 10 minutes break. Then we will go for the next chapter. Have you all had your breakfast? If no, maybe I can give you some more time so that you can go and have your breakfast. Okay, so how long you want? 20 minutes enough for you? So now the time is 9:50. 9:50, maybe we can join back by 10:15. Is that okay? Don't take more than that. So splints, don't get confused. Orthosis, splints, braces are all like different terms. Okay, different terms for the equipment which is giving support to the particular body. Is that clear? So don't get confused with different terms. So orthoses, splints, braces are all same different terms for same equipment. Okay, so which will be giving support and which will help the person to do the particular function. Prosthesis is the one which is different, which can be used in the absence of anatomical structure. So that is your prosthesis. So splint is a device that is used for support or mobilize a limb. It can be used for a limb or a spine or anything. So this is used in multiple situations where it is used for a temporary or a permanent or used based on the temporary needs or a permanent needs, depends on the disability. So classification, if you see, you have two classification. One is static and dynamic. Static will not allow any movement of the particular joint. Dynamic will be allowing the movement in the particular joint. Okay, so static will help you to stretch the joint structures which is affected, and static will help you to give you immobilization. Static will help you to reduce the weight bearing. Static will help you to discontinue the movement or prevent the movement in the particular joint. So the disadvantage of static is it may cause immobilization complications like atrophy and later maybe stiffness. So dynamic will, on the other hand, will allow certain movement in the particular joint. For example, if you want to do some movement in a proximal joint and some the distal joint alone you need to immobilize, also you can use this dynamic. So this is using an elastic band or a pulley which will allow you to do certain movements. So advantage of this is you will be able to prevent the immobilization complication. So here if you see, if this is an example, if you do finger flexion, automatically you will have finger extension movement. So this dynamic splint is done in case if you have if you're not able to use your finger extensors. So when your finger extensors are affected, then you will be using this kind of cock-up splint. So whenever you do finger flexion, automatically they will have finger extension. So this is the advantage of dynamic splint. So which will help you to do the movement. So the difference is static splint is just giving a rest. Dynamic will be giving you some movement, even though if it is protecting the joint, it will allow some movements in the other joint. Okay, so only the joint which need rest, it will allow the, rest. The remaining joints, it will allow some movements. So this all already we have seen in the other slides. We will directly go to the upper limb. So upper limb orthosis, again, this also has some principles. Principles in sense, the one which we need to look before giving the processes, before giving the orthosis. The one is the protection of the impaired joint or part by restricting the movement that is needed to that particular joint alone. So you need to maintain the alignment with the orthosis and the joint. So this will help you to prevent the deformity. Then stabilize the unstable joint. This will give the healing process. This will promote the healing process in the soft tissues, ligaments, muscles and the bones. And this will also help you to correct the joint contractures. This will also help you to correct the subluxation of the joints. Okay, this will improve the functions in case if the muscle is weak or in case if the muscle has increased tone. Okay, so according to this only you have to prescribe the orthosis. So we have two classification. One is static. We have four classification. One is static, dynamic, then continuous passive motion orthosis, then adaptive orthosis. So static is which will be blocking the movement. Dynamic will allow the movement and this also will give some little bit of traction. Continuous passive motion orthosis will be used for people who are having contractures and people who need the continuous stretching. and improvement in the stretching. Then adaptive orthosis is sometimes you may not be able to bring the anatomical deformity to the normal structure, but still you need to give a orthosis to just maintain the improvement. So that is your adaptive orthosis. So now we will see about the upper limb. So first is shoulder arm orthosis. So here the first one is aeroplane splint. See, I'm not going yeah, in detail because all these splints and other things you would have learned in your musculoskeletal and neurology whenever you are reading your treatment. Okay, so that's why I'm not going in depth. But if you have any doubt, then we can definitely have a discussion again. That clear? Then one more thing is this overall orthosis itself has only 4 hours of three hours of lecturing time. So that's why like I just want to briefly explain how much ever I'm able to cover. But if you have any doubt, you just stop me, or like later on when you read, if you have any doubt, then you tell me, we can have a discussion class again. Okay, so since like you are in a final year, I hope that you know about this, know about in which condition you will be using this particular splint, all those things. I'm just giving you a overall briefing. Is that clear? Okay. So this aeroplane splint, so this is mainly used to maintain the shoulder in abduction and external rotation. So if you see here, this is the aeroplane splint. This is mainly used for Erb's palsy. So in Erb's palsy, the hand will go for a deformity, particular deformity like shoulder adduction, then internal rotation, then the elbow, wrist, everything will go for deformity. So to prevent that, you can apply this aeroplane splint. So this splint will help hold the shoulder in neutral position and in abducted position. Okay, so the shoulder will be in abducted position, remaining all the upper limb joints will be in neutral position. And this will help you to prevent shoulder adduction and internal rotation. Okay, so this has, since it is like since the problem starts from the shoulder, it needs the proximal joint support. So the proximal joint here is the scapula. That's why you have a chest strap, so that you are able to maintain the particular position. And one more thing, most probably this particular condition will be there in kids. So that's why you give more support so that the kids doesn't move the joint. Okay, so this is the aeroplane splint. So indication of this is like Erb's palsy. I hope you know what is Erb's palsy. So when there is a distraction in the Erb's point in the brachial plexus, you will end up in Erb's palsy. Then if suppose you have supraspinatus tendon rupture, so supraspinatus tendon, and the action of supraspinatus tendon is shoulder adduction and internal rotation. So to maintain the particular muscle or tendon in a normal position and to go for healing, we give this particular splint. And if there is any avulsion of greater tuberosity from the avulsion fraction in the greater tuberosity, then you will be giving this splint so that the tendons will undergo healing. Then if there is any tuberculosis, arthritis of the shoulder joint, then also we will undergo this. We need to position the joint in immobilization. That's why we do this. We use this particular splint. Then paralysis of deltoid, then abduction fracture of neck of humerus. So for all these, we need to maintain the shoulder in shoulder abducted position and all the other upper limb joint in neutral. That's why we use this particular splint. This is the aeroplane splint. Oh, sorry. So advantage is to keep the joints, multiple joints in optimal position and does not confine the patient to bed. So with the splint, the patient may be able to walk and do his movement or do his activities in the other with the other hand. Okay, inconvenience is the patient. It's a bigger splint, and you can see the patient will be holding the hand like this. So in crowded places and all, he cannot go. But nowadays this will be a very good splint to maintain the social distance. Okay, so this is the disadvantage. So they will not be able to move among crowded places, and sometimes it may slide down. So this is a disadvantage of this slide. The next is clavicular strap. In case if the person has any clavicular fracture, then we can use this particular strap to maintain the posture along with the other orthoses. Along with the other cervical collars and other thing, we can use this because this strap will uh, uh, protect the posture in neutral and prevent kyphotic thoracic spine. Okay, so you can see this is the anterior view and this is the posterior view. So you just make the posture erect and you can tighten the straps. Next is neoprene shoulder orthosis. So this is mainly uh, used for shoulder instability. So if the shoulder is unstable and if they have shoulder subluxation and dislocation, then they can use this particular splint. So this will be having along with the sleeve so that it is supported completely, or it will be along with the sleeve and the chest strap, or it will be having only the strap. So here along with the blouse kind of a chest material it is having, so that completely it is supported, or only the strap also you can use. So this is called neoprene shoulder orthosis. So this will help you to immobilize the shoulder in certain position. So it will help you to avoid the extreme range of movements, so that the dislocation will be healing and dislocation will not increase. Okay, so this will just to maintain the shoulder in certain position, and this will help the person to maintain to avoid the extreme movements in shoulder. Next is shoulder abduction sling. So this is after surgery. If they need to abduct the shoulder, then we can use this. So this is again like it will be having a firm bolster in between the chest and the. This is the bolster that will be placed in between the chest and the hand, so that this will avoid a shoulder adduction. So shoulder adduction will be because of the gravitational pull. Automatically, you will have shoulder adduction. So to avoid that, we can use this particular sling. So there is a bolster in between the trunk and the hand. Along with that, the shoulder will be maintained in 30-degree abduction. So in case if they have undergone any surgery in the armpit and in the lateral aspect of the trunk, then you can wear this particular uh, sling. Next is shoulder abduction brace. So this is a firm one. Again, this will help you to position the shoulder in abducted position as well as in little bit flexed position. So any post surgery and post dislocation after a surgery, if the joint needs this position, then you can use this particular brace. Then this is for humeral fracture brace. So if they have humeral fracture and they are going for cast or conservative management, then you can go for this kind of immobilization. So here it is like for non-displaced fracture of distal third fracture, you can use this. So this will prevent movement in the shoulder as well as in the elbow. So next we will come to the wrist. There is cock-up splint. This is again used for your wrist and the fingers. So we have two types of cock-up splints. One is one is static, another one is dynamic. So for which condition we will be using the cock-up splint? Okay. So whenever your wrist extensors are damaged, then we go for this cock-up splint. So whenever wrist extensors are damaged, the wrist will go for flexion. So they will be having they will be having deformity like wrist flexion and finger flexion. So to avoid that, we go for this cock-up splint. So it will be maintaining the fingers in maintaining the metacarpals in the flexion, and carpometacarpal motion of the thumb also will be maintained. Okay, so this is the position. So this is the optimal hand position. where all your joint will be in an optimal position. Okay. So indication is wrist drop and radial nerve palsy. So whenever they have radial nerve palsy, the extensor muscles will be affected. So next is, this is for tennis elbow. So in case if the persons have tennis elbow, persons are more prone for tennis elbow, then you can ask them to wear this. So this is a Velcro kind of a strap, but it will be stronger elastic strap, which will be holding the wrist flexors and the extensor tendon. Okay, so it will hold the tendon so that the tendons doesn't get rupture over the elbow joint, and it doesn't cause tendinitis. Okay, so normally the extensor muscles will be rubbing over your lateral epicondyle, and because of that, they will have this tennis elbow. Okay, in case if it is like medial epicondylitis, the wrist flexors will be rubbing over the medial epicondyle. That's why they will end up in this golfer's elbow. So to prevent that, you just provide a support to the muscles so that the muscle doesn't undergo serious rubbing and cause inflammation. So next is range of motion elbow orthosis. Here the elbow will be maintained in certain position. So in case of any undisplaced fracture of distal humerus and or proximal radius and ulnar or any post surgical, you can use this. So here what you have to do is, what you will be doing is, this you can make it as a static or dynamic. If you want to make it as a static, then you just close the joint completely, where you won't have any movement in the elbow. If you want for a dynamic, then if you want to have a dynamic, then you can fix the range here. Okay, so 0 to 10, 0 to 20, like that you can fix the range. Then like you will be able to get that particular range alone. So this will not affect the joints, as well as this will not affect the muscles, and this will enhance the healing process. Then next is turnbuckle elbow orthosis. So here again it is also same like the previous one, but it is positioned in the opposite manner. Okay, so the indication is to prevent contractures. For some people who are having like hemiplegia or hemiparesis, when they are prone for contractures, then we use this kind of orthosis to prevent the contractures. So it is a thermoplastic shell which will be having a hinge joint at the elbow, which will provide little bit of movement. So whenever the patient tries to do elbow extension, it will automatically will have an elbow flexion. So this will help you to prevent the contractures and maintain the muscles without wasting. Next is like wrist brace. This will control the wrist movements. So this will help you to prevent wrist injury, or we will be using this for acute wrist injury or post-operative any support or anything. Then even you can use this for carpal tunnel syndrome. Okay, so especially you can use all these for sports person who are doing who are playing tennis, badminton, or golf. So if you give support, then you will be able to prevent the injuries. Next is thermostatic wrist hand orthosis. So this here it is again made by polyethylene. There is a plastic mold. So this will be completely tailor made, and this is again given for stable fractures of wrist and distal radius. So instead of POP, we can wear this and we can maintain the joint in a neutral position till it is healing. So when you wear a POP, it may be heavy, it may be like cosmetically, it may be very difficult. But this will help you to this will help you to overcome all those things. As well as whenever you are wearing your upper dress, it will help you to wear your normal upper dress. Is that clear? Next is spiral thumb abduction spiral thumb, abduction, supinator splint. So the indication is in case because of head injury, the person is there in the bed for longer time, then they will undergo upper limb contracture. So to prevent that, we can go for this kind of splint. Then multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, and CVA. CVA is nothing but stroke. So for all these indication, in case if the because of the weakness and because of the one group of muscle weakness, the upper limb may undergo some tightness. To prevent that, we can use this kind of splint. So this will maintain the upper limb in neutral position. All the joint will be maintained in optimal position along with thumb abduction. So this will prevent contracture. Okay. Next is knuckle blender splint. So this is to given to maintain the MCP joint in 90-degree flexion and IP joint in extension. So main function is this will immobilize the fingers and this will support and stabilize the wrist in extension. Okay. So the indication is to ulnar claw hand. If they have any ulnar nerve injury, then they will go for ulnar claw hand. So what is ulnar claw hand? Radial nerve injury, they will go for flexion. So ulnar injury, they will go for extension. So to prevent that, we can wear this and maintain the hand in an optimal position. So why they have maintained in this optimal position is, this is the position in which for most of the purposes we can use it. Okay, so you can hold the glass, you can hold a water bottle to drink, and we can use it for certain functions. So that's why they maintain in this particular position. Then spring wire knuckle bender. This is a dynamic one where like you will have a spring here. Okay. So whenever you try to do finger extension, you will be having a finger flexion. Is it clear? So here it will allow the patient to do finger extension. So whenever they do a finger extension, they will have a finger flexion also. So this will prevent the muscle atrophy, especially in the fingers. This is C-splint. Again, in case if you want to maintain the web space. So if you sometimes like you need to maintain the hand in certain position, especially after burns or after any neurological problem, you need to maintain the hand position to bring out the hand function. If you leave, then they will have contracture and deformity. So to maintain the position and to maintain the web space, we use this C-splint. So here the thumb is in abduction and partial rotation so that the web space is maintained throughout. Okay, so indication is medial nerve injury, contracture and burns. This is short opponent splint. So this short opponent splint, again, it is used to maintain the thumb in abduction and partial rotation. So the wrist and the other fingers are free to move. Okay, so again, this is also used to maintain the hand in a particular position till the problem is getting solved. Okay, sometimes if the problem if they need this particular splint for a very longer time, then they can use the hands in for doing a lot of functions. That's why we try to maintain this particular position. This is called like optimal hand position, which will help you to do very many activities. So even if they undergo contracture also, if the contracture is in this position, then we can use it for many functions. So you can see here, you can use like little bit modification and you can insert a spoon. Then you can use this to feed the person. They can feed themselves. Okay, so that's why we need to maintain the optimal hand position. So indication is medial nerve injury or medial nerve palsy or any fracture, you need to maintain the position. Okay. Next is long opponent splint. So like how you are maintaining the thumb alone, here the wrist also will be maintained in an optimal position. So whenever this is a long opponent's splint. So whenever they have any scaphoid fracture or any Bennett fracture or Duquesne tenosynovitis, so if they maintain a complete immobilization for a long term, then they will end up in contracture. So to prevent that contracture, we hold the hand in an optimal position so that after the healing, we can start using the hand. So this is a splint. This is a long opponent splint when you have when there is a need for the wrist and the forearm support. So if they don't need any wrist support, then they go for a short opponents. If they need a wrist support, then they go for a long opponents. Okay, so this is a modification which we can use it for eating purpose, then combing purpose and all. We can use this. This is mallet finger splint. So especially for any extensor tendon avulsion fracture, you can use it. So this will help you to prevent the flexion of the distal interphalangeal joint. Okay, so distal interphalangeal joint will go for flexion in case if they have any extensor tendon avulsion. So to prevent that, we go for this kind of splint, because since it is a very small joint, it is very difficult to maintain in a neutral position. So that's why we go for a splint. This is resting hand splint. This is mainly used for people who are having neurological problem, who had burns and who needs to maintain the hand in an optimal position. We use this particular splint. So this is the optimal position of upper limb, which can be used for many activities. So this will help you to prevent contracture, to reduce pain and inflammation. So basically we use this for injury and burns patient, because after burns, once they remove, then the whole hand will be contracted and the skin also will undergo contraction. So you will not be able to stretch at all. Without surgery, it is very difficult for you to stretch. So to avoid that, we can use this kind of splint. This is anti-spastic splint, mainly used for people who are having neurological problem. So the fingers will undergo flexion and adduction. To avoid that, we give this kind of a splint. So when a patient is in coma or when a patient is not able to move, then after the treatment, we give this immobilizer and we come out. Then next day we go give the treatment, again we give this immobilizer and come. Okay, so this is called anti-spastic splint. This is tenodesis splint. So this is done to train the okay, this is given for people who are having quadriplegic at the level of C6. So people who are having quadriplegic at the level of C6 will not be able to do any movement in the upper limb. So if you want to do certain grasping movement, or if you want to train them to do certain grasping movement, we use this kind of splint. Okay, so here, like if you see, if you can you see one string is there. So if they do little movement in the finger, the other finger will get closed and it will help you to hold any pencil, pen or any tripod. So this is another splint. Uh, this will help you to protect the flexors like metacarpal phalangeal and IP joint flexion, and it will block extension of MCP. Okay, so this is mainly given for flexor tendon laceration in zone 2. That means like after any tendon injury of the wrist flexors, then you will be giving them this particular splint. So this will avoid flexure extension, and this will enhance the healing process. So it is not that they will not be able to do it, they will be able to do it. So whenever they do little bit of flexion, they extension, they will get this flexion. So this is a dynamic splint. So but we want to block the extension for some time. So that's why we are giving this particular splint. This is extensor tendon repair splint. So if there is any same like here we are giving this splint for flexor tendon injury. So this splint is this splint is given for extensor tendon injury. So if there is any extensor tendon injury and they have undergone any surgery, so to prevent finger flexors, we will be using this kind of splint. So this has both static and dynamic. So if you have see here, so the fingers whichever needed some movement, you will be attaching this particular spring, and this will help you to do some movement. Okay, so you can change this to all the other fingers wherever you need the movement. Okay, so if you want to permit limited flexion, you can use this. Or if you want to completely prevent flexion, then you can completely remove this and leave this on the splint. So this will help you to heal the extensor tendon as early as possible. This is metacarpal fracture brace. So in case if there is any metacarpal fractures, we don't go with the POP. So if there is any metacarpal fracture, then we will go this kind of brace. So here, if you see, if there is a fracture in the index finger, or little finger metacarpal, then you will be going for this kind of fractures, this kind of splint. Okay. Sorry, it is used for all third, fourth, and fifth metacarpal fractures. So here, so completely it will be preventing any movement, and it will be giving them complete rest. Okay. So normally, if you don't have this kind of brace, we can give this support with the ice cream stick. So with the ice cream stick, completely you can keep it at the palm, and you can put a strap, so that we can prevent flexion and movement in the metacarpals. This is static ulnar deviation splint. So mainly given for in case if the healing, given for joint healing and trigger finger. So this will hold the MCP in a protected space. This is extension block buddy orthosis to block the MCP extension to promote active PAP extension. Okay, so this is all like small finger splints. In case if you have any fractures, then you can go for this. And people who are having mild RA, so they will be having the swan neck deformity, and they will be so this you can use it if they have a very mild swan neck deformity in one finger, then you can use this kind of splint. So this will be like more cosmetic, and this will help you to prevent the problem. Okay, trigger finger, mallet finger, swan neck deformity, all those things we can use. So especially you can use this splints for uh, people who are having RA and other deformity. So this is just a figure of 8. So you can remove this and put it wherever you want. It is like an elastic band, but it will be stronger and it will prevent that particular movement. This is a tri-point splint. So here if you see, it will help you to prevent flexion of the proximal DIP, and it will prevent extension of the other two. So here you have a pressure to maintain the joint in extension, and this is the counter pressure to maintain the joint in extension, complete extension. Okay, so 3-point principle is used. All the splints you will be using 3-point principle. Okay. So now, so these are the I think I have covered almost all the upper limb orthosis. So special consideration basically preferably for upper limbers, whenever you are using this splint for burns patient, you need to see to that the bandages are adjusted properly, because they will be having a heavy bandage over the burn side, and when you wear this over that, sometimes you will instead of maintaining the joint in neutral, you will be going for hyper extension or hyperflexion. So you need to make adjustment according to the bandages. Okay, then you need to make sure that you are preventing infection, especially when they are having burns or open wounds. You need to see that you need to remove the particular orthosis, clean the wound properly, and do a proper dressing in the wound. And whenever you are using the orthosis in ICU, you need to keep the material very sterile because you will be using for different patients, and you need to sterilize the material often. So whenever you are using the orthosis for any rheumatoid arthritis patient, then you use a very thin thermoplast. So this is a very thin thermoplast. So when you use this very thin thermoplast, it will help you to maintain the joint in proper position and avoid the deformity. Okay. So last, this is called the compression garments. This is given especially for lymphedema or patients who are having burns and other thing. So people who are having like after mastectomy, I hope you know what is mastectomy. Mastectomy means removal of the breast. So when after they remove the breast, they will be damaging the axillary lymph node, which will lead to lymphedema. Or maybe after a surgery, cancer or anything, if there is any block in the lymph nodes, there will be swelling of the upper limb, that is called as lymphedema. So for those people, you can ask them to wear this elastocrub material, because wearing the stockings and wearing the other crab bandage will be very difficult. So you can just ask them buy this kind of material, and you can ask them to wear. So also have for lower limbs. Okay, so this is like a elastic, thick elastic material, which like a socks, you have to wear it and you have to tie with the dress. So these are the things about the orthosis. So if you have any doubt, you go through the slides. If you have any doubt, then you can ask me either in the group or separately, or if you want to have an overall revision also, we can have later. But please go through before we are going for the tutorials. Is that clear? Sorry, I took extra 5 minutes. So later you can discuss and let me know when to replace tomorrow's class. Because 8:30 I have the appointment for vaccine. Actually, it is not for me, it is for my dad, but I have to take him for vaccination. Okay, thank you all.